Hello, the program that you're about to see is called The Future from the Past, and you will see two video stories, which cover a bit different but still regional infrastructural developments. So one story is about the University Cosmic Observatory, which was founded in the late 18th century by Jesuits, and then it became part of the Imperial Austro-Hungarian educational infrastructure, but also the infrastructure of power and military that was built in this region, which became Austrian in the late 18th century. And then the second story continues with the Soviet Empire. So let's say the Austrian Empire collapsed during the First World War, and then there was a short period of the Polish interwar state, and then the Soviet Union captured this region. It became part of another empire, the Socialist Empire. These two stories, they of course connected to two big empires. One was Austro-Hungarian Empire, which strived to establish astronomic observatory on these eastern peripheries, not just because of curiosity or academic research, but also because of the need to control the population and to observe. So this important research as observing. Then the Soviet Empire also built this infrastructure not just for the purposes of academic research, but also partly for the means of controlling these lands and these people. So we have this combination of imperial imagination, this extensive view from these imperial managers, let's say, but it's also, these are stories about what happens when empires collapse, and then how this vision and this outer vision and this desire to research extensively what is surrounding our planet kind of collapses into very peripheral thinking. This is not just the peripheral, the local story, it's more a global story, part of what we live now, part of the current development. And this is the guy, Joseph Lizganik, who established the astronomic school here in Lviv, in Lemberg. Besides maintaining lands and territories, Lizganik observed a lot.
We're about to talk about the Lviv Observatory. Actually, that was and still is the smallest observatory in Ukraine. Here, a lot of the materials about very early astronomical observations, starting even from 17th century. The observatory was established as a separate specialized building in the middle of May of 1771. This early observatory, which was built upon the Jesuits' gate around the Jesuits' church. And actually, this all early story of astronomical observatory, as for Vienna, as for Vilnius, all these were connected to the Jesuits. Since Jesuits have the best dispersed network of observers over the whole globe. Another stage of history is about the coming of Austria, in those times the Empire of Habsburgs, and one of the first things which were done on these territories, new coming territories, which were considered like belonging to the empire by law, actually, is to make maps. Here was commanded such prominent figure, Joseph Lizganik, also former Jesuit, and he was the personal geodesist and astronomer of Emperatrice. And his task was to make maps, both for, let's say, economic reasons and for, like, say, improving the governing. And he was the next figure by government. Я от подьоргав цілими складами, я постійно не можу вверх, не щоб нас буде. Тому стройний. Так. 19th century, it became clear the place of Lviv in Austro-Hungarian Empire. That actually it's going to be an important province, or let's say center of, let's say, economical, scientific, whatever. And in this time, actually, the university was in decline. And in this time, Austrian, let's say, government decided to move the focus to the more applied aspects and, let's say, military aspects of geodesy and astronomy. In the middle of war, under the Germany occupations, here the observatory actually was closed as university, and most of the collaborators were surviving, and this is Evgeny Shuremka, who was director of observatory. He managed to go to the railway station, and he, by bribery, he got this like ticket that he sent this equipment to the Reich. And he productively worked many years, and still on my memory I was taking picture of comets and other objects by this device, for example. A small excursion back to the, let's say, post-war episodes. This building, it calls mezzanine, this architectural form, it's called mezzanine. That's a special, like, building to have the level the site to make some observation. It was designed for specifically for meteorological observation, but quickly went under the rule of our observer. Even at the beginning of 1957, let's say, a lot ahead of the launching the first satellite of Earth, yeah, the Soviet Union decided to create a large, let's say, network of observational sites to observe this actually satellite. In this site, the first photograph of the artificial Sputnik 1, yeah, was taken. By the way, to make this track not solid or like dashed, the guy was waving by the head before the camera. That's if we see, we can see that different empires were building this, and actually that was not empires, that was people, some specific people who actually most of the time done a lot not because of the support of empire, I would say more despite of the support of the empire. They all were astronomers. They have a particular mindset. People are losing this precise ways of thinking, clear way of thinking, have some empirical humidity, understand it's difficult to measure something, and we are some kind of instrument to measure the world. Not we are supposed to rule the world. So all this hype about space right now will have definitely opposite effect, because it persuades people that the opinion, the money, the success is important, not the process. And again, we see in observatory different times, difficult times, usually always difficult times, but anyway, observation should be done. They should be going. Observation in astronomy is like a reflection of the state of the society. Right now, recently we've got another three decades fold improvement in the precision. But I'm afraid that this does not touch this kind large cycle of people, because people have this phone, they use GPS, but many of them even not sure that the Earth is not flat. The task of physics, task of astronomy is measure the world we have, not to rule them, but observe.
So we are driving to the city of Zolochiv, which is a small town in western Ukraine, and nearby Zolochiv there is a village, Sasiv, and nearby village of Sasiv there is a location which is called Under the Azimuth, with azimuthum, which has this cosmic connotation. And this is not by accident. This territory is rather high above the sea level, so it's very good for establishing a communication infrastructure. And in the mid-70s, Soviet powers built here a center for transmitting messages, mainly TV and radio and television and phone connection between Moscow and Washington DC. So this was the infrastructure which maintained the state communication between two superpowers, and we are about to see this.
Це ми. Добрий день. То за вами їхати? То туди? Добре.
So we are about to visit National Center for Cosmic Research.
Антенна зв'язку вмонтована, профіксована. Марка десь під антеною або в антені.
60 kilometers from Lviv, the biggest industrial center in the western part of Ukraine, you see this beautiful landscape. It's mainly agricultural lands, and they have this landscape has these small heights, like almost small mountains, but of course these are not mountains. So it's a kind of plain territory on the edge of the region which we call Podillia, which would be very plainy, kind of the steppe almost region. So it's the end of Precarpathian hilly landscape, and on one of such small hills which are surrounding this beautiful landscape, Soviets built this cosmic infrastructure, and we are about to see and to tell you some story about this. So what you see here, it's an amazing story. So imagine late Soviet Union, early 70s, detente. There is a warming up of relations between the Soviet Union and the United States. Nixon meeting Brezhnev. The relations become more or less okay. Two superpowers try to establish a normal, if it's possible in general, some normal communication. For this communication, they need communication devices. So Moscow decides that they need to build a system which would connect the Intelsat
the cosmic satellite with Moscow, and then to transmit the signal to the United States, to Washington DC. So in order to kind of send signal from Moscow to satellite, they would need the retransmitter, and this retransmitter was built here in the plains of western Ukraine, on the very edge of the Soviet Union, the western part of the Soviet Union. And for this they needed to build a retransmitting antenna. So this antenna that you see here, it's a typical ship, the sea ship antenna, which was used mainly for research or military purposes. So this kind of antenna was normal for the big sea ship. They call it the ship type antenna, and it was installed here in a total, it's like taking from some military or other special production, brought here and installed on the site as one single antenna. Installed in 1974, so it's completely functional, but just doesn't need to fulfill its functions. So the signals from Moscow would go to this antenna, and then it would send the signal to the Washington DC, and this C-type antenna is built on a beautiful cylinder late Soviet structure, which keeps on the three columns, the three concrete columns, it keeps these 300 tons of infrastructure, communication infrastructure. So the first one has 25 meters in diameter, and it was really Soviet production. And the second one is one of the biggest in Europe. It's 32 meters in diameter. It's a Japanese antenna which was used for the same communication purposes. So to maintain the state, the governmental channel between Moscow and Washington, they built these beautiful pieces here. During detente, during this, what is called it in historiography, разрядка. This antenna was built in 1974, and the second one in 1986 during perestroika. So actually during perestroika, this big antenna, the Japanese one, was responsible for making the international Soviet-American television bridges, as they call them, telemosty. These television bridges were very popular during Gorbachev period, during perestroika, when the Soviet people and the American people could see each other and discuss various matters. So these technologies of the late Soviet Union were not used in the 90s. They deteriorated, and only in 2017 the Ukrainian state decided to reintroduce them back into some other purposes. These antennas became part of the state agency for space research. The specialty of this Japanese big antenna, which is diameter of 32 meters, is that it can receive signals in two diapasons, so which is very special. And now they strive to become the part of the whole European network of these receivers and submitters of information, and to do deep space research. The interesting project took place last year, which may be in some interest for the audience of Ars Electronica. The Kiev company scanned 100,000 pictures of children about peace and other relations about the Earth. These images were scanned, and in a binary type coding system, they were transformed into black and white kind of codes, and then they were transmitted through the specially developed software into the outer space. It took 26 days to transmit these images to outer space, and there was this kind of desire, maybe imagination, that somewhere someone in the space may receive these signals, and maybe they would understand that these are images of small humans from this big planet Earth. This is the beautiful example of late Soviet but also imperial infrastructure, which shows this imagination of the big Soviet imagination about the space communication and extensive move beyond the borders of the big empire. These objects can be considered as monuments from the past, as monuments of the Cold War, as monuments of late socialism, but they also monuments of the human imagination about the space, the imagination of humans which cannot really maintain the earth and the villagers. So whenever you travel, if you travel through Ukraine, take the route from Lviv to Zolochiv. This is the good route which leads you to Kiev, to the capital, and then just take a small journey aside, and you will see these beautiful objects which are symbols of our human desire to get out of our planet Earth in order to colonize and to learn some outer spaces. But this also is a symbol of our inability to maintain our own reality and our own planet and our own locality. So it's a kind of ironical monument, but it's a beautiful monument.